Hello. Welcome back to another CNC project video with legacy woodworking machinery. Up to this point, every board, every joint, and every lesson has been building towards a major milestone. The upper face frame is complete, and this week we're building the two raised panel sides that will finally let us turn these separate assemblies into the upper hutch of the convertible China Hutch. But getting there meant solving several very different problems. One woodworking setup came loose and ruined a stile. The raised panels required a dedicated double-sided fixture, and once all the parts were finished, the first glue-up became a race against the clock. By the end of the week, though, the face frame and both side panels were standing together, and for the first time, the upper hutch began to look like a cabinet instead of a collection of parts. The first components were the 10 rails that make up the left and right side assemblies. Unlike many earlier parts in this project, these blanks were already milled to their finished size before they reached the CNC. That changed the machine's job. Instead of cutting the entire part from an oversized blank, the CNC was being used strictly as a precision joinery machine. Each side panel uses a top rail, a bottom rail, and 3 center rails. The top and bottom rails receive a dado on only one long edge, while the center rails receive matching dados on both edges. The tenons are also different. The end rails are shaped to close the exposed ends of the panel assembly, while the center rails remain symmetrical. The long dados were machined first. Then each rail moved into the vertical workstation so the step tenons could be cut into both ends. Before committing to any full depth tenon or mortise, I use a shallow test program. It cuts the exact shape of the joint, but only about 1/16 of an inch deep. That small test gives me enough material to measure with calipers. If the joint is a few thousandths off center, I can split the difference, adjust the work offset, and rerun the test before the cutter ever reaches the full depth. It's a simple habit, but it removes a lot of risk. Instead of sacrificing a finished part to verify the setup, I verify the setup first and then machine the part with confidence. Those tenons combine a broad shoulder with a deeper rounded section, giving the joint more glue surface and more mechanical support than a simple flat tongue. Because these cuts are happening on end grain, they machine exceptionally clean. A roughing pass removes most of the material, and the final full depth pass cleans the joint with consistent tool deflection around the entire perimeter. The result is crisp, repeatable joinery that only takes about a minute per end. Once the rails were finished, I moved on to the 4 long stiles. The stiles first received dados on the broad face for the future face frame and back panel. The cutting strategy was the same one used on the rails. Rough the center first, then use a light climb milled finish pass at full depth so the cutter sees the same load around every finished edge. Then the stiles were repositioned in the vertical workstation along this long edge. These were too long for the smaller vertical workstation, so they went into the X-axis vertical workstation, the same style of setup originally designed for long door components. The CNC machined the panel dado and the 5 mortises that received the rail tenons. Everything was going exactly as planned until vibration began backing off the threaded clamps. 3 of the 4 clamps loosened just enough for the alder blank to move during the roughing pass. The cutter never left its programmed path, but the wood moved underneath it. Once that happened, the dado wandered and the stile was ruined. The solution didn't require a new cutter or new toolpath, it required better work holding. I placed a sacrificial board between the clamp face and the finished stile. That let me apply much more pressure without denting the soft alder. The sacrificial board absorbed any clamp marks, while the stile stayed locked against the fence throughout the cut. After remaking the damaged part, and admittedly, I had just realized then that I needed another 2 stiles on top of the 2 that I've already done, the complete set for both side panels were set and ready for dry fit. The rails pressed into the stiles with firm hand pressure. The shoulders closed cleanly, and every mortise lined up exactly where it was supposed to be. The fit was excellent. For an actual glue-up, I would probably add another 1 or 2 thousandths of clearance, but the machining strategy itself was proven. With the frames dry fitted, the only remaining components were the 8 floating raised panels. These introduced a different challenge because both faces had to be machined accurately, and every panel needed to repeat the same result. Instead of locating each blank individually, I built a dedicated MDF fixture with 2 reference corners, one for side 1 and one for side 2. After the fixture was screwed to the table, I used the CNC to trim the fence edges so they were perfectly parallel and perpendicular to the machine axes.
Opposing wedges held each blank against the fences. Tapping the wedges together locked the panel sideways, while a light tap on the panel kept it flat against the table. Because the fixture and wedges were MDF, accidental cutter contact would only mark a replaceable fixture, not damage expensive hardware. The fixture did more than hold the panel. It created a repeatable production system. Every side 1 operation used the same corner and work offset, while every side 2 operation used the opposite corner and a second work offset. My glued up blanks also revealed a limitation in my old planer. Across the width of each panel, one side could be 10 to 15 thousandths thicker than the other. Rather than stopping production to rebuild or recalibrate the planer, I used the CNC to establish the final reference surface. Side 1 began with a light surfacing pass that brought the panel to a consistent 7/10 of an inch thick. Once that face was true, the remaining joinery could reference the table surface and stay accurate on both sides. This is one of the practical advantages of CNC woodworking. Sometimes a CNC machine creates something traditional equipment simply can't. Other times, it simply compensates for a limitation elsewhere in the shop and keeps the project moving. After surfacing side 1, the same cutter created a broad rabbet around the perimeter. A 90-degree V-bit then machined the decorative bevel, leaving a small flat at the bottom so the profile looks sharper and more intentional. I also offset the V-bit so the non-cutting center tip stayed in the air. The cutting edge of the tool formed the bevel instead of dragging the center across the shoulder, which reduces tear out and left a cleaner surface. The panel was then flipped into the side 2 corner. The second work offset was activated, and the same rabbet and bevel sequence was repeated without another surfacing pass. For every flip, 3 things had to agree: the correct fixture corner, the correct work offset, and the correct G-code program. I actually caught one cycle with the wrong work offset because the machine moved towards an unexpected starting point. Knowing where the cutter should travel before it begins cutting can save a part before anything is damaged. With a quick test fit, the finished panels fit the dados, but they were slightly tighter than I wanted for assembly. A little sanding solved the immediate problem though. In the future, I would add more clearance to the panel tongue so it slides freely without forcing it into place. These center panels are not glued into the frame, they need to float so the solid wood can expand and contract with seasonal humidity. Small rubber spacers keep each panel centered while still allowing that movement. To keep those spacers from rolling around during glue up, I fixed them in position with a small drop of CA glue and activator. I also marked the rails with arrows so the top, bottom, and center components could be oriented correctly without stopping to think once the glue was applied. The first side panel proved that accurate parts don't automatically make an easy assembly. One stile receives 5 rails, 4 floating panels then slide into the dados. The second stile has to align with all 5 tenons while each panel finds its groove at the same time. As soon as the glue goes on, the clock starts ticking. In the middle of my glue up, I found that a couple of panels still needed a quick sanding before they would slide freely. The joints were becoming tacky, the 5 clamps had to be positioned across the frame before the glue began to take control. The assembly came together successfully, but it was closer than I wanted. I could make it work alone, but I was fighting the process instead of controlling it. For the second side panel, Tracy joined me. The first assembly proved it can be done by one person. The second proved it shouldn't be. With 2 people, one of us could apply glue while the other positioned rails and panels. The same parts and same joinery and the same clamps suddenly felt calm and manageable. Nothing about the design changed, we simply improved the process. By the end of the week, the upper face frame and both raised panel sides were complete. This week wasn't really about rails, stiles, or raised panels. It was about building a process that could produce accurate parts repeatedly and then carry that accuracy all the way through assembly. The CNC can repeat every programmed move, but the fixture, workholding, offsets, tolerances, dry fit, and glue-up plan determine whether those moves become dependable furniture parts. Build a better process and the same machine produces better results.
Have you ever had a woodworking setup loosen during a cut? Or discovered that during a complicated glue-up that you needed more hands than you expected? Share what happened and how you solved it in the comments below. Now this next part may not be for you, but we do have project plans available on Legacy's website at legacywoodworking.com/projects. And we'll leave the link in the video description below. If you're enjoying this convertible China Hutch build, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing so that you don't miss out on when the next video comes out for this project series. Now, in the next video, we are going to be bringing everything together to build this upper hutch carcass, from the face frame to the raised panel siding, and then we're going to be adding the final details, such as all the shelving that's going to go into it and the top cap that's going to make it look like a finished piece. So as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in that next video.